All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're going to explore what is, without a doubt, the most complicated and maybe the most fascinating object in the entire known universe. And I'm talking, of course, about the human mind. I mean, we've all had those, right? Or maybe for you, it was that classic dream about your teeth falling out. Or, that moment you said something and instantly wished you could just rewind time. All those weird little cogs of consciousness just cranking away. Well, that's exactly what we're diving into. I mean, just think about that for a second. It's kind of wild. We've got telescopes that can see to the very edge of space, and yet the 3-pound universe sitting right inside your skull is still one of the biggest mysteries out there. But hey, that's not going to stop us from trying to figure it out, right? So, what is psychology really? I mean, the word's roots go way back to the Latin for study of the soul, which is pretty cool. But today, the official definition is a bit more, well, scientific. It's the science of behavior, so everything we do, and the mental processes, the thoughts and feelings that are driving all of it. Okay, so when you hear the word psychology, I'm willing to bet a very specific image pops into your head. So let's just tackle that stereotype head on. Come on, admit it, you're picturing him, aren't you? Sigmund Freud. The glasses, the beard, that patient lying on the couch talking all about their dreams. It's the classic, iconic image. And look, while Freud was a huge deal, he is so far from the whole story. Yeah, this really says it all, doesn't it? The stereotype is basically one guy and a couch. But the reality? Oh, it's this huge, sprawling world of competing ideas. We're talking about everything from neuroscientists literally mapping out brain activity to social psychologists trying to figure out why we act the way we do in crowds. It's a massive and, yeah, sometimes pretty contentious field. So, if the whole story doesn't start and end with Freud, where did the actual science of psychology get its start? Well, for that, we've got to travel back to 19th century Germany. And look at this. You can really see how fast things started moving. I mean, in just about 60 years, we go from the very first lab ever to these game-changing books on consciousness, dreams, and behavior. It all really kicks off in 1879. That was the year that put psychology on the scientific map for good. It really all started with this guy in Germany, Wilhelm Wundt. And his idea was honestly revolutionary for the time. He basically wanted to be the chemist of the mind. You know how a chemist breaks down a substance to see what atoms it's made of? He wanted to do that, but with our thoughts and feelings. So his approach got a name, structuralism, and the main tool he used was something called introspection. It sounds complicated, but it just means looking inward. He'd ask people to report exactly what they were sensing and feeling in a given moment. Like, okay, you're smelling coffee. What's happening inside your head right now? Or describe the experience of seeing that sunset. But, and this is a big but, there was a huge problem. That kitten example is kind of funny, but it points to a massive scientific flaw. It's just too subjective. I mean, you and I could be experiencing the exact same thing, and what you feel could be totally different from what I feel. How do you measure that? So yeah, this school of thought, it didn't stick around for long. But the failure of structuralism didn't end the whole project. Not at all. Instead, it kicked off this huge debate. New schools of thought started popping up, and they all had very different ideas about the right way to study the mind. And that brings us to the next big idea. Enter William James and his school of thought, functionalism. See, he wasn't interested in the tiny little building blocks of the mind. He asked a different question. What's the purpose of it all? He was really inspired by Darwin, and he was like, why do we think? Why do we have feelings? Basically, how does all this stuff help us adapt and survive? Now, at the same time James is asking why, there's a doctor over in Vienna who's working on a theory of his own, an idea that was about to turn everything on its head. And yep, you guessed it, that doctor was Sigmund Freud. And this is basically the origin story of his big idea. It started when he observed a colleague's patient, this woman known as Anna O, and he noticed something incredible. Her physical symptoms actually got better when she just talked about her traumatic memories. That was a huge breakthrough. From that, Freud developed a technique called free association, basically just letting patients talk about whatever popped into their heads, and that became the absolute foundation of his new theory. And that theory was psychoanalysis. The really radical part, the core of it all, was this idea of the unconscious mind, that there's this whole part of ourselves full of motives and memories that we aren't even aware of, but it's shaping everything we do. And just as revolutionary, he was arguing that mental disorders weren't some kind of permanent curse. They could actually be healed through talking and self-discovery. But you can probably guess not everyone was on board with digging around in some invisible, unconscious mind. So pretty soon, a new movement came along that did something drastic. It basically threw out the mind altogether and said, let's just focus on what we can actually see. This was another huge shakeup, a total redefinition of what psychology should even be about. This was the era of behaviorism, and it was led by some real heavy hitters. You've probably heard of them: Ivan Pavlov, John B. Watson, and the very famous, or maybe infamous, B.F. Skinner. And their argument was pretty simple and really powerful. They said, look, you can't see a feeling. You can't scientifically observe an unconscious thought. So let's just forget all that fuzzy, subjective stuff. Let's study what we can actually see and measure, observable behavior. For them, psychology wasn't the study of the mind. It was the science of behavior, period. End of story. Okay, so after all these big battles of ideas, structuralism versus functionalism, psychoanalysis, then behaviorism, where did things finally land? What does psychology actually look like today? The big takeaway here, the thing I really want you to get, is that today, psychology is what we call an integrative science. It's like a giant melting pot. No single school of thought won the war. Instead, the field today takes the best, most useful ideas from all of them. You can kind of see how it all fits together here. We've already talked about psychoanalysis and behaviorism, but modern psychology also pulls in ideas from humanistic psychology, which is all about personal growth, and cognitive science, which brought the focus back to mental processes like memory, but with way better tools. A psychologist today might use a mix of ideas from all of these, because the bottom line is, the mind is just way too complex for any one approach to have all the answers. And hey, it's not just psychologists who are saying this. I love this quote. It comes from an astronomer, a guy whose job it is to literally stare into the cosmos. And even he says that the most complex physical object we know of in the entire universe is right here, between our ears. And here's the amazing thing. We all have one. We each get our own incredibly complex, mysterious, and powerful mind to carry around. So I'll just leave you with this question. What are you going to do to understand yours?